just to give you a small background upon me, I'm a certified trainer from Change the Game Academy on resource mobilization. I've been into fundraising and resource mobilization for almost like the last 6 or 7 years on professional terms, and I've been into program implementation from 5 or 6 years. And overall, I've been in the social development sector for uh, 13 to 14 years in that. So today, the topics that we are going to cover is very simple. It's fundamentals of fundraising and the fundraising cycle used by professionals that is there. Then we'll also talk about the fundraising model of Rainbow Homes, and then we'll go into the question and answer session. I would also request every participant who is joining to kindly give in their signatures in the chat box so that we know exactly who has joined in. And if there are questions and queries, you could kindly leave them there so that we can address them later on the question and answer session. We may try to address as many questions as possible with the time permitted by the end of the session. So moving ahead, the basic of fundraising is of fundraising and the fundraising cycle. So first of all, what we see is that why do we need fundraising? Does the social sector really need money? I mean to say, when we talk about raising resources, it's like, does the social sector really need money? That is the question I would say most of the funders ask. The most common question is that we face is, why do you need so much of money? What is the requirement? So we'll try to understand this, that what is required by the social sector. So in that way, when we talk about resources are basically, which can be quantified in terms of monetary terms, what funds can procure. But then it's not only about money all the time. So when we talk about resources can be quantified as finance, human resources and volunteers, infrastructure, time, support, representation, promotions. I mean to say, nowadays corporates and even people who come up, they think that they're giving time, they're giving resources, they would provide for you, they would support you, they'll give you emotional support, they'll walk through the journey. So I would say with time and age, the concept and the entire understanding of support and raising funds has changed. Initially, when we started raising funds, it was all proposal driven. It was very, I would say, financially supported. Money would come. So we also have to understand that raising resources is not only in terms of money, it's not only in terms of finance, but it's in terms of, I would say, value of association, in terms of partnership, in terms of, I would say, walking the walk, walking the talk, walking the journey along with you. Moving ahead, I would say, then we have to understand what resources are. So understanding from where the resources are generated from, who has the resource is something very important that we have to kind of figure out. Who has the authority to allocate these resources to you? Who has the authority to sanction them to you? Who can do it? Who can make it happen for you is something that is very important that we have to understand. And also it is important for us to understand that who are we, knowing our strengths, provided if the resources that we need are allotted to us, how are we going to use them? Are we in a scenario where we can use the resources to the most effective possible manner? So once we have this understanding that what resources are required, what are needed, we kind of go ahead. So now understanding from where resources come in from. So if we see that there are three major players in the entire sector. One is the government, the second is the private sector, third is the civil society. Civil society are the social sectors. We represent the civil society, the people. We have, people is the power over there, but the resources are very less. So we have at least 1 is to 5% of the total gross national product or the domestic product. But then when we go to the government is the public power, is the representation. They build the legislatives, they have the power to implement, they have the power to make things happen. So they have 100% of the gross national product. But then the money or the resource which we look up to mainly is from the private sector. They have almost 7 times of the gross national product. So under which the corporate social responsibility comes in, and also they have the power of employment of people, of resources, of technology, of, I would say, unimaginable resources in that sense. Now just understanding how does social change come about it, because we from civil society, we want social change to happen. So just now to understand how would social change happen. So social results are achieved, I mean to say, working in tandem when the government, when the private sector, and when the civil society organizations work together. So when we all work together, we look up to the government to provide us the framework, the infrastructure, the legality to work and function. We look at the private sector and the businesses to provide the funds. So here there are two very important, I would say, key notations for you to understand. One is mobilizing support and the other is local fundraising. Now, when we talk about mobilizing support and local fundraising, they are two very different aspects of, I would say, bringing about social change or achieving social results in a sense. When we talk about mobilizing support is a fact where it's a long-term process. You initiate it, you advocate for causes, but local fundraising is more about service-oriented deliveries. So both result into social change, but mobilizing support is basically where you take everyone together, you mobilize a cause, you make things happen, you advocate for change, you want acts, you want policies to be refined, and then you are not certain of the cause or the outcome while doing mobilizing support. But when you do local fundraising, you are certain. It's basically your administrative towards service delivery. So what happens is that most of the NGOs, what they do is they are more into, I would say, service delivery. There is a gap and you address the gap. So that's where I would say there are different civil society organizations. Some do mobilizing support and some do local fundraising. But today we are going to talk mostly on local fundraising. So moving ahead, just a minute, guys. Yeah. So the basics to consider while raising funds is the most, I would say, as the talk is mostly centered for children of MSW who are graduating from college this year. So it's being designed in such a way that they understand and they get the whole idea of fundraising. So the most basic concepts to understand while fundraising is that what do you bring to the table when you go to negotiations or when you go to design a campaign, you want to raise money. So the first thing is that you have to think is that what do you have? What are your strengths? What are your contributions? Most of the times I would say is that when we also want to tell people, we tell what we are doing. I mean to say, we talk about the process. Instead, we should always talk about the value that the process is going to achieve or is going to result into. Value of the cause should be always the selling point. It should not be the process. We always, mostly what we do is we talk about the process of achieving the change, but then we should always talk about the change that is going to occur. In line with this, I'll say talk about the mandatory assessment for professionals and students to consider at all times while taking up either a cause or getting associated to a new job or to a company. So I'd recommend this the CLASP principle to be followed. See, whenever CLASP is a very simple principle. C for credibility, L for legitimacy, A for accountability, S for service orientedness, and P for power. So whenever we kind of start a cause or we represent a cause or we represent an organization, the first thing that we have to check is for credibility. Is it credible enough? Even though when we are, I would say, approaching corporates, we are approaching donors, we have to check if they are credible, and we also have to make sure that whom we are representing or the cause that we are representing, is it credible enough? Second, we also have to consider legitimacy. Is it legitimate to do such a thing? Is it legal to engage into such activities? Is it legal to carry out these activities or these processes? Second, accountability. How are we going to be accountable to our donors? How are we be accountable to the system? How are we going to be accountable to the law that is there? Fourth is service orientedness. How are we going to be service orientedness? How are people going to see us? How are we going to reach our beneficiaries? How are we going to serve them is something that is very important. Then P for power. Power is you always have to that what is the power that we hold? What is the power that a donor holds? What is the power that people, what is the power that we are going to exert upon things that are going to be changed? So power is something very important in the whole dynamics, which we kind of at times we underplay. I mean to say, when we go and look into this this slide over here, the civil society. The civil society doesn't have, I mean to say in terms of resources, it has very less resources. It is only 1.5, 1 to 5% of the gross national project produce. But then you talk about people power. I mean to say people power itself is a huge power. I mean to say, if you talk about power, these civil societies or the people or your beneficiaries, they represent elect governments. They can change the entire landscape or the political scenario. So when you talk about power, so imagine all of you civil societies coming together and representing a cause or advocating for it. So in itself, it becomes a huge power in this. Now, going ahead on it, knowing yourself. So when we are advocating for a cause, when we are there to bring about change for social causes, for social change, it's very important for us to know about ourselves. So the first thing is we have to know about our budget. What is our budget tomorrow? What is our budget tomorrow? What are going to be our expenditures? Then secondly, we have to also know that who is going to donate for the budget. How many donors do we depend upon? How would you wish budget to look like in the next coming future? How many donors do you wish to depend upon? And then again, what is my strength? So this is basically about knowing yourself, knowing what your cause is, what your compliances are, what your expenditure is, your past, your present, your future, and where you want to go. And then the most important thing when I talk is your strengths, because every organization would have its weaknesses. Every person would have their weaknesses. But then strength is something that is always going to take you further ahead. Now we are going to look into our donors. So it's very important for us to know who our donors are. Who do you know? So when we talk about donor, on the donor pool, we always, there's always somebody whom we know. So the first thing that you should know, look for is whom do we know over there? What are our opportunities to branch? What are our opportunities to reach out to? Whom can we just reach out to and say, hi, do you know me? And I am from such and such cause. Then the most secondary thing that you want to know is what do they fund? So there may be n number of companies, there may be n number of corporates, there may be n number of foundations, but they all have different agendas. They all have different priorities. Based upon your cause, you have to reach out to a select few of them who would be in tune with your messaging, in tune with your ideology. What is their message? Why do they fund these initiatives? That's very important for you to understand. Why do they fund these initiatives? Just because they are working for cancer, they wouldn't go out funding each and every cancer initiative that is out there. What is their mindset? What kind of strategies do you have? Do they have? Are procedures and eligibility criteria known? Do you know about their procedures and eligibility criteria? Now, when you have kind of show that there is this you know about your donors, you know about yourself. Now there has to be this matching of the mindsets of the donor as well as the seeker. So now when we talk about the donor and the receiver, the mindset is basically the donor is mostly into selling. Your mindset is I would say your mindset is the benefit of your beneficiaries. Your priority is your beneficiaries. The donor's priority is to earn, to make profits. The donor's focus or the corporate's focus is their product. Your focus on your product needs. Then your donor's vision is basically happy customers. Your vision and your mission is basically social change. So when I talk about their strategies, their intent, their messaging, how do they do? So basically what you're looking at a term or a place where you can have a match, where your product and your project where the donor's product and your project needs can have match, where their vision and your vision is aligned. It's basically your vision has to be aligned with their vision in that sense. So now we'll talk about the key characteristics of effective fundraising. So when we talk about fundraising, fundraising is very effective and it's more fruitful when it is from person to person. People like personal connect actually. When you know somebody, it's very easy for you to raise money when it's on a face-to-face basis. It requires long-term investment and commitment actually. It's not the first time you approach somebody. It does happen that you approach somebody for the first time and they would certainly reach out to you, they will support you. But then when you want to raise money for a continued period of time, and you want to raise money on considerable amounts of time, then it is a long-term investment, and it's a commitment. It's a commitment from the end of the person who is raising funds. If the heart opens up and convinces the mind, the money would flow. So when I was talking about the value aspect, so if the value of your cause reaches to the hearts of the people, then the money would never stop flowing. It's always about the value that is being ascertained by the cause. It is never about the process. It's always about the value and the outcome of your cause that is going to make people give you. Then personal contact has the strongest impact. Basically, fundraising is more like friend raising. So it's not about raising money all the time. It's always about networks. It's always about connections. So in life, if you want to move ahead, it's always relationships that takes you ahead. So in this field of work, also in the civil society, in the social sector, it's always about raising friends. It's always about building relationships, collaborations, partnerships. And then the most important thing is that you have to dare. I mean to say, when you say dare, you have to have the courage to ask people. It's always important that you should at least ask. The most that he or she would say is no. Apart from that, there's nothing else that they would say. And then the most important thing after that is that you require teamwork and support. So these are the 7 key characteristics of effective fundraising. One is it has to be a person-to-person contact. It requires long-term investment and commitment. You have to be there. You cannot isolate or leave the cause in between and say, no, we are not able to raise funds effectively, so we should stop. Then you should have contingency plans for it. Then you also have to be very sure about the value that you're going to ascertain by it. Then it has to be personal contacts. You have to raise friends. Don't focus only on raising money. Focus on raising friends and building relationships. Dare to be confident, dare to be asking about support, and build up a team which would support you and which would help you. Now what I would be doing is I'd be sharing with you an entire cycle of fundraising. How do we kind of do local fundraising in steps? So just take a minute, look into it, analyze things. There are 4 quadrants into it. So this is a basic 10-step process. But then if you see around, it's broken down into 4 quadrants. That's the red, the blue, the yellow, and the green. They represent different cycles of the fundraising aspect. First of all is, why do you need a fundraising? Then second is, how would you do it? Then you go and identify yourself. You ascertain yourself. You get to know who your what your finances are, what your organization is, what you want to do. Then you again go back and see who your possible donors are. From where would you get your donations? Then you go into profiling your donors. Based upon the profiles, you kind of prepare messages. You'll reach out to them. Then you would, based upon the kind of donors that you're choosing, you'll also use specific fundraising techniques, whether you want to write a proposal, you want to approach a foundation, you want to do a campaign, you want to do a fundraiser, you want to hold a fete, you want to hold an event, you want to hold a fundraising dinner. So it all depends upon your donors, what kind of event you want to hold, what kind of engagement you are trying to plan. Then you will go into, based upon the fundraising technique that you're going to use, you're going to make a team. Then you're going to have a LFR plan. By LFR, I means local fundraising plan. Then you schedule events. Then you go into promotion, you go into advertisements. For that, you build leaflets, you go reach out to your donors. When I mean interview donors, you'll go and ask them that what they would like to engage into, how they would like to interact with you. Then there's negotiations. When I talk about negotiations, it's about you talking to them, telling them exactly what the program is. They would have questions, they would have queries. Then there are events. Events you kind of engage them into, where you had planned over here based upon the techniques that you had. Then you again go back on the events, you go back and say thank you. Then there's a report, you go back and do donor servicing. So this is a small cycle of, I would say, 10 steps. But then these 10 steps take time. It's not that you can just do it today. So there's a lot of planning that goes in. And you can also see you have to analyze, you have to plan, you have to select, then you have to, I would say, do things. And then you also have to get back to your donors with impact, with evaluations, regular updates. So there's a whole lot of things that are going on. So this is just a brief snapshot that you are able to see over here. Things may, I would say, terms of engagements may be different at times when you have different kinds of programs, whether you're approaching corporates, you're approaching individual donors, whether you're trying to do online, you're trying to do crowdfunding, you're trying to do door-to-door raising of funds, you're trying to, I would say, reach out to organizations, schools, colleges. So, but then the basics of fundraising always would remain same. You knowing yourself, you analyzing your donors, profiling them, choosing techniques according to them, creating messages, and then getting back to them. These 4 steps always remain there. So now again, going towards one of the most important aspects of fundraising is donor appreciation, where you identify your potential donors and create interest in them. Then second is, when you create interest in them, you have to dare to ask, you have to dare to pose, you have to ask them, see, this is our cause, would you like to support us? Do not forget to thank them, and then always provide regular updates. Whether a donor supports you the next time or the third time, it is very imperative that you always keep updating them with your progress. At least they know that you are credible. So again, we come back to the clause of credibility. So when you keep getting back to them, it's always that you're telling them, see, we are credible, even though you're not supporting us, that's fair enough. But then we are there for the long run. Irrespective of all these, I would say, processes, there are a lot many things that additional key aspects on fundraising. There are a lot many aspects that we really have to pay attention on. One is messaging for donors, profiling of donors, timing of messages, content, images, or what kind of contents do you want to use? You want to use images, you want to use words, you want to use videos, then flyers and brochures, communication strategies, lobby, meeting the right kind of people. Policy study is very important. Under which policy could you approach people? Is it right? Is it legal or not? Then you have to do your stakeholder analysis. Who would be against you? Who would be against? Who would be for you? What are the factors that could influence your program, your events? Then there are the pitches. What kind of pitches you would have? You'll have to design them. Then you'll have to go into proposal designing if there's a proposal that has to be submitted. There are impact studies. There are unseen scenarios also which you have to be prepared for. Going further ahead, raising funds, possible sources from where you could raise funds. So now when we are talking about the donors, the first donor that is, we forget to look inwards actually. The first donor is you yourself. If you yourself don't support the cause that you are representing, then it becomes kind of shallow in that sense. Then you can reach out to your family and friends. There are school, colleges, campaigns, fundraisers, events for a cause. Then there are government schemes and government funding, CSRs. That I mean, the central government is there. There are central government schemes. There are state government schemes. There are public sector companies under the CSR. Then there are foundations. There are national and international foundations whom you could approach for funds for. Then there are high net worth individuals, family foundations, and trusts. Then there are crowdfunding funding platforms, and there are various ways in which you can raise funds nowadays. Then there are media and digital engagements. There are engagement with third-party payment gateways engagements, where you you buy a plane ticket, you can pay 5 rupees, 6 rupees for a cause, you go to Paytm, you contribute 2 rupees. So these are third-party engagements. Then there are international fundings. International funding is still to date the highest. It brings in the highest amount of funding for the civil society as on date. So we also have to understand that fundraising is not begging, it's not harassing people, it's not forcing people to give. Also, it's very important for you to understand that do not fall for intermediaries and agents. There are people who would say that we'll get you funds, we are an agency, we'll get you funds for corporates. Please do not fall for them. Always, there are no free lunches. You have to understand that. It's just that you would be putting money down the drain. You also have to understand that fundraising has to be fun. It gives donors a good feeling, and it also has to be fun for the fundraisers too. It cannot be stressful. If it's stressful, then it's not fundraising, it's an harassment on yourself. Now we'll be talking about the fundraising model of Rainbow Homes. So Rainbow Homes is a program which was started in collaboration with, I would say, a partnership foundation from Netherlands, and it was an international partner for us. and they provided us the initial seed money. And when the program grew, we kind of reached out to, I would say, government schemes and policies. So we are under the RTE and the Sarva Shiksha Abhiyan. We assess infrastructure and support from the government under these schemes, and they provide us with infrastructure and support for the children and the homes where our programs is launched and where our programs are operational. Then we have key strategic partners who kind of fund us in terms of emergencies. They have pledged support to us for a long period of time. We report to them on all aspects. Then we have civil society contributions. By civil society contributions, I mean we have the people, the homes, from where the operations of Rainbow Homes take place. We reach out to people. There are other people walk in, they give support to us. Then we have CSRs. We have a lot of corporates, well-known, renowned corporates who are helping us in this walk towards, I would say, supporting vulnerable children. We are in different cities, so based upon cities and initiatives and programs, we are engaged with different CSRs. Then we are also present among crowdfunding platforms. We are on Benviti, Keto, Global Giving, Give India. Then we have references and personal contacts, and then we have Friends of Rainbow Homes. So this is how, I mean to say, the overall structure of the Rainbow Homes funding is, I would say, designed. But the most important thing for us is that we have a national office which does its own fundraising, but then we also have state offices in 10 cities which does their own fundraising. So in that sense, it's a decentralized and centralized system. Both we kind of, from the national office, we support the state offices in their endeavors of raising funds, providing links, providing contacts, providing, I would say, help and support to design proposals for causes, updating them with policies, updating them with proposal requirements and designs, numbers. So in that sense, it works in tandem. So this is how we at Rainbow Homes, we raise funds. We are trying to diversify our portfolio into all the possible ways where we can, but then we tend to focus a lot on, I would say, references and personal contacts and raising friends for Rainbow Homes, because they kind of reach out to us even at times when we are in desperate needs. So I come to the end of my talk over here, and then we'll go into the question and answer session. And if you have any doubts and issues, we can kind of take it from there.
Thank you, Shobhit. So that was an interesting presentation. Before we move on to the questions that the participants have put up, I want to ask you is that there are people who offer funds which are not through the proper route, and they offer it to NGOs. Can you just also comment on that part, that how do we respond to funds which are not really accounted, and how do we respond to such funders who come in?
Recently, if you remember, that there was demonetization, and during demonetization, there were a lot of offers for people to NGOs to accept a lot of hard cash and then give back money in white to them after the fundraising or demonetization stage was over. But as I said, that there are no free lunches. Always there would be an impact on your operations. And then as I was talking about the credibility, the class principles. So it's always about credibility, being accountable and legitimate. So in the long run, they would certainly hamper you. But then I would certainly say that it doesn't kind of sit well when you talk about values and bringing about social change. So in that sense, you're not being accountable towards the beneficiaries that you have. So offers do come across to, I would say, social sector organizations, but then it is entirely, again, it goes down to their value system. I would say that what they are looking for and why they are in that space.
So in fact, I would just add to what Shobhit said is that we usually ask the source of the funds, and if it is not a clear source, then we refuse to take, even if it's any huge amount, which as a principle, as an ethics that the organization follows, that we don't take money which the source is not clear.
You never know what would happen in the, I mean to say, there could be an IT raid, you could be under IT scrutiny, somebody can complain against you. So you never know what would happen tomorrow. Today money looks good. I mean to say, when I said do not follow for intermediaries and agents, see, greed is the basic reason why. Greed and easy money, everyone thinks it's easy to get money, but then you should understand that there are no free lunches. There's always a catch. You're never going to get that money. If it's so easy, why would others people strive so hard for it? In that sense.
And then there are umbrella organizations like the United Way, like the ones who are
There are
credible
a
in
few
the
very
market.
credible
Yeah.
organizations. There
Yes.
are very few credible organizations, but then you have to again vet them. You have to be certain that they
Yes.
kind of help you out with it, and they have a legacy in the market.
Correct. Correct. So great, Shobhit. That was a very good description of what we do. And Hans is our intern from St. Joseph's College. He's working. He's studying in. He's completed his social work final year. And I request you to now open your audio and put in the questions that have come in from the audience, and then we'll start answering them. Hans?
Uh, Hello, yes, ma'am. I could gather a couple of questions which came in the chat earlier. One question was, what is the difference between fundraising and resource mobilization? Another question was, what is the fundraising protocol method? The question was a little ambiguous, so maybe those who asked the question can clarify it.
Fundraising. Could I just get the first question? Difference between fundraising and resource mobilization.
Yes, sir.
Yeah. And the second question is?
Fundraising protocol method.
Acha, fundraising protocol method. Okay. Okay, so the first question, I would like to take up the first question, fundraising and resource mobilization. So when I talk about resource mobilization is an entire process within which fundraising is also a part of it. So when I talk about resource mobilization is basically when you advocate for a cause. It's like, just take it for example, a school is not working. So you see that the school is not working, there are no desks and benches for it for the children to sit. There are no toilets. So there are two ways of approach. One is you could approach the authorities. And the second way is you can provide for the things that are not working over there. So when I talk about providing for things over there, you just raise funds and then you'll just replace those things. But on the first case, on the former case, when you'll contact the authorities, first of all, what would happen? You'll have to gain, I would say, you'll have to make people aware. You'll go and talk to the principal over there. You'll tell them, see, this is not working. Why is this not working? You'll try to figure out what is going to happen. What are the things that are not working over there? Why the toilet is not maintained? Then you'll contact the authorities over there. If the authorities don't take any action, you'll go to somebody higher up over there. So what is happening is that here, in the first case, you're mobilizing people to bring about change. You're mobilizing people to bring about resources in the school. So what would happen is there has to be an approval, there has to be an inquiry, there has to be the education department would be involved into the whole scenario. But in the second scenario is that you'll see that the school is not working. You'll go to the principal and you'll say, see, this is what we want to do. Can we help you out with that? The maximum thing that would have to happen is that the principal would need an approval from his immediate superior or the block division officer that there's so-and-so individual, he wants to help us give all these things. So see, there's a difference between, one is service delivery. So what your fundraising is basically, it's service delivery. There is a gap of something and you want to fill in that gap. So how do you want to fill in that gap? You want to fill in that gap by raising funds for it. But when you talk about resource mobilization is basically you're trying to redo or revamp or redesign the entire system in which the delivery or implementation of a particular program or process is done. So that is the difference. I hope I've been able to clear the difference between fundraising and resource mobilization. So resource mobilization is also where the outcome cannot be ascertained. You give the power, you kind of start the process. You start the process and you can only go up to a certain level. And then after that, the decision taking is in the hands of the legislators, in the hands of the assembly, in the hands of the authorities, or you can say it's in the hands of the government, whether they want to bring about a change or not. But in service delivery, what happens is that you are the executioner and you are the implementer of it. So I hope I've been able to address details.
Yeah.
Now, yes.
The
So
next one I think is of the protocol, that question on
the protocol.
Shobhit,
Yes.
Shobhit, this is Shubhita.
Yeah, Shubda, hi.
Yeah, hi. Can I add a little bit to this?
Sure, please.
I don't know if you took up the volunteer bit, but the resources are material resources, things, money, everything, and human resources. So, like Shobhit said, getting government people or other people. So, I think volunteers are a big part of this resource. And things that we cannot organize by employing people, or we don't have that much of funding, so then we depend a lot on this human resource in various ways. Yeah, that is all that I wanted to add.
Okay, thank you.
Thanks, Shubda.
Thank you. So when you talk about the fundraising protocol, so fundraising protocol is, if you look at this step, it's basically broken down into four, I would say, quadrants. One is where you analyze yourself, you analyze your donors. Second is you plan. Third is you execute. And fourth is you get back to your donors. So depending upon the kind of activity that you want to do, or the kind of fundraising channel or the tool that you want to take up, after the, I would say, choosing the fundraising techniques, if you can look onto the diagram, your entire plan would be designed accordingly. If you want to approach only CSRs, then your plan of engagement and interactions would be different. But if you want to raise money from, I would say, your neighbors, your families, your friends, from your society, the interaction would be different. The plan of execution would be different. But then the basics always remain the same. You have to always analyze your donors. You'll always have to analyze, profile them. You'll always have to create messages according to them. I mean to say, if the people whom you are going to approach, they don't speak English, and you go and speak English to them, so it's going, your efforts are futile. So you have to be relevant. You have to be contextualized. You have to understand how best you can communicate with your prospective funders, your prospective donors, how you're going to reach out to them, what kind of value that you're going to communicate to them, how they're going to receive it also. So that is all that you have to think. Then making a LFR plan is something where you have to think about what can happen, what is there, what can happen, what can go worse, contingency plans, how do you build up backup plans, then you plan the event and then you execute it in that accordance. So in that sense, this is the protocol of any, I would say, even if you look at a program cycle, apart from, I would say, a few, I would say, analogies, nothing else would change. You have to analyze, you have to plan, you have to execute, and you have to get back. So this is the protocol for any program cycle in a sense. Yeah, so
Shobhit, answer any more questions?
Yes.
So another question which came up is, how can an association of social workers in district level raise funds from initial stage?
Okay, from initial stage, how can they raise at a district level? So that it depends. Again, I'm saying it depends upon for the cause of what they are going to raise. If it's a medical cause, it's an educational cause. It's, I would say, a cause for orphanage. For if you can also tell me for what cause it is, then I would be able to better respond to it in that sense. But then I'm just saying that if it's for an educational cause, and then you again have to go back and see, when I say why LFR or how LFR, then you'll have to see that how best can you address it, whether you have to do mobilizing resource or you have to do an LFR. So see, if you want to revamp the entire education system, you cannot do an LFR. It's not going to help. Then you only have to do mobilizing support over there. Okay. So again, if you have to bring about, see, if there is a road that has to be made, for that, obviously you can do an LFR. But I would always suggest that for a event or a cause for such magnanimous thing, you always should resort to doing an MS, mobilizing support for that. So it again comes back to the cause that you want to support at any level, wherever you want to do. Either it is at a district level, it is at the state level or the national level. You always have to kind of follow the same cycle that is here. But the only thing is that the actors and players would change over here. The people whom you are going to advocate to, the people whom you are going to reach out to, the people whom you are going to lobby with, they would change. I would say the policy level implementation would change. The permissions that you would seek, they would be of a different level, depending upon the scale and the state at which you are going to address or you're going to raise funds for.
And I would like to add here that the district, depending on the language, the culture,
Exactly.
and the stakeholders who are coming into play, depending on what sector you are in, whether you are in education or health or emotional well-being. So what is the sector and who are the key people who matter in? So that will also play a key role in your fundraising.
That's where profiling of potential donors is very important. When you analyze your calls, you will have to analyze your stakeholder analysis becomes very important. So when I said over here on this key additional aspects of fundraising, so lobbying, meeting the right people, policy study and stakeholder analysis becomes very important. So if you see, these factors are all embedded here in the cycle over here. Somewhere out there, you can see this, all these factors are a part of this cycle. So you have to pay key attention to for decision making, for reaching out to the right stakeholders. You have to pay attention to every small detail in this LFR cycle.
Would like to just add here to what Shobhit said, is that sometimes a lot of causes don't have funding for quite a lot of time till they are able to demonstrate that it is a good model. And then there are people who are convinced when they see results and then they start funding. So most genuine projects also go on some kind of small funders and then go for bigger funders when there is a kind of a showcase which is created for the people to see the proof of concept. Ans, can you take the next question? I think Mr. Alex had asked a question.
Question from Alex is fundraising methods essential for all NGOs?
It depends upon the, I would say, the reputation of the NGO at times. There are some NGOs where people would just walk into and give them money. But then there are NGOs which have to build up their brand. Suppose an NGO which is starting today, they'll really have to build up what they are doing. They have to kind of prove that, see, this is what we are doing and we are here. So it again comes down to the class principle over here, if you see. So if you are a credible organization, you are legitimate, you're accountable, you're service oriented, and you pack power, people would be willing to come in and support you. Just for example, you look at, I would say, Save the Children, NAS, any of these big organizations, people, you just say that we are from this NGOs and people know that you are there because they have built up that reputation and credibility, isn't it? But then when there's an NGO which doesn't fall true to all of these principles, then people would be hesitant to support them. They may support them for once, but then when they get back with a bad report, then certainly they wouldn't want to support them. So it is kind of imperative for all the NGOs to kind of follow the protocols and follow to the principles of fundraising, because that would help them to establish that they are credible, they are legitimate, they are accountable, that they are service oriented. So it becomes important for NGOs to follow the protocols and to be in line with the laws of the land.
Okay.
Yeah.
Thank you, sir. We will go to the next question.
Yeah,
Question
sure.
from Libin. What are the various approaches to raise funds?
As I said, the various approaches to raise funds is, first of all, you can you yourself, you can raise funds. Second is your family and friends are there. If your family and friends are not going to support you, others are not going to support you. But now if you look into it, see, there are the CSRs, there are government schemes, there are state schemes. So the first thing that I suggest is, whenever you want to raise funds, first of all, look into what the government has provided for you over there. When we talk about social change over here, the first sector, see, so the civil society organizations, they want to bring about social results. But then you see the government is the biggest player over here, because they control the rules, they control the laws, they control even the private sector to some extent. But then you have to see what the government has provided, what kind of framework is there that the government has made for you to access, I would say, benefits within certain schemes. Second, then I will say is, then look into the private sector where you can tap in resources and support for it. Then it would say, when I said about the civil society organizations, look into your neighborhood, ki bhai, what else the other civil society organizations can support you. Build partnerships, build associations, build federations, build collaborations. That would settle. And then you have the people power. When I talk about people power, you have crowdfunding platforms, you have the reach of media, you have Facebook, you have Twitter, you have LinkedIn. So these are very strong mediums for you to raise funds. But then raising funds from crowdfunding is, I would say, it depends. For some it works, for some it doesn't work. But usually people also say that there are high net worth individuals. But when you talk about high net worth individuals, it's a game which very few people have been able to crack. So for example, I know a lot of high net worth individuals, but I'm not able to get in touch with them, as simple as that. So for me, when you talk about high net worth individuals, I would only think about the people in my vicinity whom I know. And I tell you, it is a huge game changer. When you just reach out to your own friends and families, you would be surprised to the amount of funds that you would be able to raise, and also to the amount of connections that you will be able to get through them. Because it's very easy for you to convince or to believe, make people believe in your cause who are close to you and who know you. So first of all, I'll say, if simple framework is look into the government, second, look into the private players, third, look into your civil society brotherhood, fourth, look into the people that are around you.
Okay, thank you, sir. Another question from Libin is, what are the requirements an NGO should have to raise funds?
First of all, it should be a registered entity within the framework of the state and nation that it is operating in. Second, if they want to raise foreign funds, they should have a legal and valid FCRA certificate. They should have the requirements of being an, they should be a registered NGO, trust, Section 8 company, and they should be having, they should not be, I would say, they should not be involved into, I would say, antisocial elements of any sort. Um, they should have a valid cause. They should be contributing towards, I would say, the good of the society, and they should have all their papers in place.
Filing the returns also.
Filing the returns, I mean to say, the income tax should be there. They should be legitimate in that sense.
Okay, thank you.
Yeah.
I think a question which is very close to it is, are there any rules of how much fundraising a non-profit organization has to do?
As of now, there are no rules to how much fundraising can a non-profit do, but it obviously comes down to the scope of your operations. What is your operations and how much is your requirement? So it's again up to I would say, the efforts that a NGO or a civil society organization can put in. That is the amount of funds that they can raise. So it's like directly proportional to your efforts. The ROI would always be proportional to whom you're approaching, for what you're approaching. So see, for example, there is very less funds in the field of research in our country. It's only I would say 1% of the CSR funds that are allocated from the government, as well as from CSR that goes into research. So in that sense, if you want to raise funds for research, it would be very difficult for you to do that. But then if you want to raise funds for education, you would be able to raise ample amount of funds for education in that sense. So it also depends upon the cause and the sector in which you are raising funds.
Especially education for girl child, causes for girl child have a lot of more acceptance, and new causes have a lot
of is there, which is being taken up very aggressively by a lot of corporates and individuals.
Okay, okay, sir. We also have a couple of questions from the YouTube live.
Yeah, please.
There were 3 questions which talks about how to convince people
yes.
on fundraising, as in how to approach to them, and how to change people's mind so that they're convinced about giving funds.
See, as I said, that fundraising is a person-to-person connect, and it is a long-term, I would say, it's a long-term commitment. It doesn't happen in one go. Some people, people are very different, and they're all differently wired. They're all complex. So some people see things rationally. Some people think emotionally. So when you get engaged in discussion, it comes across, that you start to read people in that sense, and then you'll say, okay, this tactics would work for him, this would not work for him. But then it comes down to the value. of the program, I'll say, you have to be very sure of what kind of change do you want to bring about. What is that you want to bring about through the program or the cause that you're supporting. So if you can talk about the cause and then you can support it with your process, then I guess it becomes very valid, that people would support you. It becomes, I would say, practical. People should see through and through, and you should also be able to demonstrate effectively that you're going to be accountable to them. So that's why I said during my talk that getting back and reporting to people even when they're not supporting you becomes a very important and detrimental fact. See, now example, now there is COVID. So now the first thing what they would have done is they would have seen, okay, I keep getting a mail from Save the Children, or I keep getting a mail from any of the NGOs which have just been sending them emails, and they must have had an emailer, ki kindly support we are doing for COVID. So what they would have done, they would have just blindly given it to that organization, irrespective of somebody who must have been working just next door to them. They would have donated to somebody who's working, I mean to say, 3 states away from them. So it's very important for us to keep, I would say, reaching out to our donors and our supporters, even though if they support us or if they don't support us. So it's always important for us to be accountable and also to be able to demonstrate how we have been able to be accountable. See, being accountable is something, but being able to demonstrate how we have been accountable is very important. So I guess these are the very simple things, right? When you talk about these principles, being credible and being accountable, so you be credible when you're being accountable. So as you're being accountable, you're being transparent. A lot of people don't want to be transparent. So if you're not transparent, then there is always this credibility cause which gets hit. So when your credibility gets hit, then your funds get hit. So that's how it's all in tandem.
Okay, okay, sir. Another question from Anlita Francis is, how can we add a fun element to fundraising?
Adding a fun element to fundraising is very important. Actually, see, what happens is that if you can get your funders involved in the activity, that is what people want. They want to be a part of it. See, when you explain things to them, they would understand. But when you kind of they would only hear to you, sorry, when you explain things to them, they'll only hear to you, they'll only listen to you. But when you involve them, they will understand it, they'll see the value, they'll see the process, they'll see the hard work. And so if you want to make it fun, you could create events, you could create campaigns where they can be a part of it, they can come and support you. And then you'll certainly see when Shubha was talking about having volunteers. So when you bring in these people, I mean to say, they will kind of see the potential that you have, number one. Second, they'll also see the reach that you're going to reach out. They'll also see the social results. They would be able to tell you, they'll also able to add value to your program. You can meet n number of people. They'll help you grow your circle. They'll help you grow your fundraisers, your donors. They'll help you promote. They'll help you, I would say, put in a good word to others. So to be make fundraising fun is to, first of all, is to have interactive sessions. When I was talking about interviewing your funders, so it is very important that you go and ask them. See, what happens that we perceive what people would think, we assume. Instead of assuming and perceiving, it would be good if we go and ask them what would make you donate. So again, I say, see, conceptualizing is good. When I'm talking about this, here we analyze, but then it is very important that we have to go ahead and we also have to do it. So we have to dare to ask. So it's very important that we have to go and interview them and ask them, see, what is it that is going to make you donate? So when you start doing it, you're getting voices and ideas from the people whom you seek support. So that is one thing that I would suggest, is go and ask them. Try reaching out to your funders, to your people. Just go and ask your neighbor next door what would make him donate to a cause. And I guess you'll get your answer over there. So when you go and ask somebody what would be fun for you, so then you get your answer, and then you can plan your activity or your fundraising technique. You can choose your fundraising technique according to what your funders want. So that's the, I would say that's one way that you can approach it, how you can make fundraising fun.
Okay, thank you, sir. Another question from Harsha. How to reach our donors effectively through social media platforms?
Okay, so when you talk about reaching our donors through social media platform is that, for example, if you choose Facebook, okay, so Facebook gives you an option of what age group you want to reach out to, whether you want to reach out to males, you want to reach out to females, you want to reach out to senior citizens. So there is this bifurcation. Also, then in which region you want to do your, I would say, appeal or your advertisement or your promotion. So this is one way of getting it done. Secondly, could you just again reiterate the question, please? It just skipped out of my mind.
Uh, how to reach out? Sorry.
Yeah, reach out to our funders on social media. Yes. So
Through social media. Yes.
yes, yes. So as I was saying that on Facebook, you have all these parameters through which you can reach out to them. But at the same time, you'll also have to see that whether there is a return on investment or not also. Some of the NGOs have been very, very successful in raising a lot of money through crowdfunding platforms on social media. But then what happens is that you need to, getting yourself registered on Facebook is very difficult for an NGO in that sense. A very few of them. We from Rainbow Homes tried to do it, but we have not been successful. Even other NGOs, I know that they have been trying to do it, but it's been very difficult. So, but then there have been organizations which have been raising a lot of funds. Just for example, Give India is there, Global Giving is there, NAS is there, Save a Child is there, Cry is there. And they have been able to reach out to, I mean to say, people give a lot on Facebook because these, as I said, that they have been able to build up a brand for them. So it's very important that if you want to start raising money on Facebook, you have to start, I would say, you have to start promoting yourself. You have to start reaching out to people, not only in terms of requests, but also in terms of what you have been doing, how you are going to bring about a change, what are the challenges, what are the success stories. So it is a long-term process. I wouldn't say that it would just happen overnight. So if you want to be successful on social media, you're going to invest today, but the benefits you would be reaping is after, I would say, after 2 years or 3 years down the line. It would not happen instantly because it would take a lot of time for you to build up, I would say, consistency with your readers, with your audiences, with your donors and your funders in that sense. So it is a very viable solution, but it is a time taking and cost intensive method of, I would say, raising funds.
Okay. Thank you, sir.
In fact, we will also be doing another session, which is with how we do, promotion on social media. So we'll do a separate session soon. Yes, Hans, go on.
Yeah, we have a question from YouTube live chat. Steffi MF is asking, how can we identify and combat illegal fundraising? Do you think that the existing system should be strengthened for this?
How can we identify illegal?
Uh, identify and combat illegal fundraising.
Okay, so identifying is, first of all, I would again say, don't fall for intermediaries until unless they are verified and vetted. There would be very credible organizations in this sector who would act as intermediaries and agents, and they'll say, we'll get you funds. So it's always imperative that you do a background check. You ask at least 4 or 5 different people from your, I would say, sector or vicinity from which you are working in. That's number one. Secondly, combating is, you have to be aligned to the values of your organization. It again comes down to the values of your organization which you are representing. So if you follow the values of the organization, I guess you would not have a problem with raising unethical funds in a sense. You know, if raising funds which a businessman just wants to give to you and then say, get me back an X amount of funds in return. So it's again comes down to the value of the person and the individual and the organization that you're representing. So I guess combating there, you cannot do anything in that sense. There are no laws to prohibit organizations from taking certain amount of money or from individuals from donating money. There are no laws to that. But then it is, again, it's an individual or independent call of organizations that what kind of value or legacy do they want to leave and what kind of causes they want to support. So it's an ethical question in that sense. It's an ethical call.
Okay, sir. There is a follow-up question. Do you think that the existing system should be strengthened for this?
The existing system can be only strengthened and can only be enacted upon if it is reported. The thing what would happen is that the NGO would lose credibility if it comes to light, you know. So if there is a certain case or a scenario, what would happen is that the NGO would just lose credibility in itself, and then they would kind of they would find it difficult. But then there are NGOs who are able to even evade, I would say, bad press and bad scenarios and move forward ahead. The only thing is that reporting can be made more transparent, or it has to be made more regular. So now I guess the government, after the time era of 2015 onwards, they have really kind of made FCRA reporting and acquiring FCR is much more stringent in that sense. So that's one of the steps that they have taken up. Then you have to report every quarterly now. FCRA licenses are now for 5 years instead of being for an extended period of time. You always you again have to get them renewed. So these are some steps that the government has taken up to, I would say, combat and stop these illegal, I would say, processes and methods of raising funds.
Okay, sir. Another question from YouTube live chat asked by Manuel Sebastian. Is there any government departments that look into funding and management of it by NGOs?
Yeah, then, the MHA is there. They look into it. They can call up anybody. They can summon. They can give summons to anybody. They can call any organization. They can order an CBI inquiry into it. They can order the police or the IB to go and verify organizations. In fact, when you apply for an FCRA, there is an IB inquiry. You are being vetted thoroughly for it, and then only based upon that IB report, you are given an FCRA.
And your FCRA license can be revoked as well.
Yes.
Okay, sir. I think that were the questions.
Yeah. So, if there are any further questions, queries, or are there any doubts upon the presentation or any of what I have said, you could kind of feel free.
Yes. We'll also be sharing record of the Zoom webinar with the PDF of this presentation. And in fact, I'd like to also introduce you all to Shubhada, who is also part of the call. She is the manager academy for our organization. Shubhada, can you come on video and just share a bit about yourself? You're muted, Shubhada.
So sorry. So I'm Shubhada. I work in the same team as Preeti, and the team essentially, we create knowledge around the street children vertical, and then we also share it with people. So my role is, of course, to reach out to college students, to different academic institutions, and reach out with whatever knowledge that we have gathered around this work that we have done for several years. And yeah, I think I have met some in the college of at St. Joseph's, but we are open to reach out to any college anywhere in the country. So I believe there are students from different parts of the country, and if there are faculty also, we are open to having these sessions.
Yes, and in fact, I've written myself in the chat the email IDs of people who are going to be contacted for the webinars that we conduct for social work students. You are all welcome to copy these email IDs and contact us. We are doing a lot of curriculum for work around vulnerable children, and we'll be happy to join hands with your colleges. Especially with the social work departments and education departments, because these are the people who are the change makers of tomorrow. So we have special focus on teachers of tomorrow as well as social work professionals, and Shubhda and I will be actively engaging with colleges, and therefore it was important to discuss with you all. Over to you, Shobhit, for any closing thoughts from your side.
Fundraising is simple in a sense if you take it without any, I would say, inhibitions. The moment you start thinking, it's very difficult. So the whole idea is, again, when we say, is to do. just go out and do it, and it's easy. It's just like talking to anybody else. The only thing is that you're raising support. If you think you're raising support for a cause, don't think that you're raising money. In that sense, when you talk about money, it becomes very, I would say, difficult. But when you talk about raising support, it is something that, you know, people kind of want to kind of associate with them. Support is something which is collaborative, but giving money is kind of like just you're getting rid of it. Chalo, paise de diye, khatam karo. So it's like, it would be very good if you can change your approach from raising funds towards raising support. That is what I would like to say. Raise support, not raise funds.
Wonderful. So thanks, Shobhit, for a wonderful and very engaging session. And I'm very happy with the so much of attendance that we had today, both on Zoom as well as YouTube. And we are really overwhelmed with the number of people who have come in here. And in fact, I'd like to share with all of you that we'll go on with a series of interactions from Rainbow Homes. And we'll be also sharing the other themes that are coming up. And since your email IDs and contact numbers are with us, we'll be sharing it with all of you very promptly. And stay tuned and be connected to us, and have a nice day, everyone, and be safe and be healthy. And hopefully we'll be all interacting once again. Thank you all. Thank you all the interns. They are going to share a link with all of you. My interns from St. Joseph's College who have completed social work. They are Ants and Silo and Makuyu and Huma. All the four of them have conducted this webinar. Like, they have done all the work behind the planning and preparation. And I extend a sincere thanks from Rainbow Homes for their work. And they are sharing a link with you all on the chat ID. Please enter the link, because they will be the ones who will be following up with you for the certificates. And thanks, Shobhit, once again. And all of you have a nice day, and namaste, everyone. And we'll be connected soon. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you. Have a good day all. Bye.
Thank you, Shobhit.
Bye. Thank you, Shobhit. Bye.
Bye.
Bye bye.
Bye-bye.